what she told me was he didn't want to let me down, and so he kind of pushed it off to the side. But my contract expires in September. I will have to go home to the U.S.
What did she mean?
I'm not ready to go back.
Gonna fire you. He wasn't gonna.
Yeah, I was like, you firing me, bro? Chill. It's already done. So
Sorry. This is So Your Boss Sucks Now What, and I'm Natalie Renee Parker. One of my favorite TV shows growing up, I'm an 80s baby, was Fraggle Rock. It's this Muppet show created by Jim Henson, who actually created the Muppets, and then he created this show called Fraggle Rock, where the Muppets lived underneath the floorboards of this house. And they lived in a place called Fraggle, and they'd have all these different adventures teaching you like how to have conflict and how to be kind and all the other things. But one of the best characters, in my opinion, of Fraggle Rock was Uncle Travelin' Matt. Because Uncle Travelin' Matt had all of the awareness, the wherewithal, the wisdom to leave Fraggle Rock and go exploring and learning about the human world. He'd come across everyday objects or curious cultural practices and try to understand them. He was brave and he was kind of weird at times. He was very misplaced. But he'd also write back postcards to his nephew at Fraggle Rock to try to help him understand what was going on. My next guest reminds me of Uncle Travelin' Matt. Not because he's weird, but because he's an educator, he's a global traveler, and he's trying to change the world through his new coffee company called Kwanzaa, where they're disrupting the industry through fair trade and East African partnerships. Daphne Brown is from Albany, Georgia, and he started in classrooms there, but found himself in Korea, of all places, trying to navigate a Confucian influenced classroom and all the cultural dynamics, said and unsaid, that go with it. With his bachelor's degree from Albany State and a master's degree from Florida A&M University, HBCU, go Rattlers, and then got an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. He's overcome a ton of challenges when it comes to leadership and bad bossery, right? So in this episode, we're going to explore what it took for him to be that resilient. We're going to talk about how saying yes to new opportunities, even when you're uncomfortable, can unlock unexpected paths. And we'll uncover why teaching is more than just knowledge transfer. It's about shaping communities and changing the future. Let's go talk to Daphne. Daphne, welcome to So Your Boss Sucks Now What? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm really good. Listen, I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you're here because our conversation to plan for this was amazing and I cannot wait for everyone to hear it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to I want to tell everybody your journey from, being in Albany, Georgia to then teaching, cross country. Like,
Well, it's really more of like a small town to a big city kind of adventure. My grandmother was an educator my whole life up until she retired when I was in eighth grade. And when I decided on going to school, I ended up going to the school my mother graduated from, which is Albany State University. And I had one of the most fantastic teachers ever named Dr. Dankwa. He recently passed away this year. He was my favorite teacher, my political science dad. Um, he always mentioned how politics is who gets what, when, where, and how. And I always thought, when I get like 45, I want to be a professor too. And funny enough, that journey came a little sooner than I thought it would be. At 20 years sooner, actually. I was 25 when I decided to go into education. Um, I had recently got my master's from FAMU, and a job opening popped up at Albany State University to teach political science. And so I signed up, I did the interview, I got the job to teach a full year of US Georgia government. And I think halfway through that semester, another college reached out to me and said, "Hey, I would love for you to teach political science at our college." for a high school dual enrollment class and at our college. And then that summer in 2019, I also got to teach at a branch location over the summer as well. And like we mentioned before, like being adventurous, I got an email that was like, let's go teach in South Korea. This is what you need. This is how you do it. Boom. I end up missing the first interview and then going there. Yeah.
So let's rewind a little bit. Talk to me about how it felt for you because you had this vision of like, being really old at 45 years old. I won't take that personally. To doing it in your mid 20s for
Mhm.
people who were fairly close in age to you. Like, how did you navigate that? What did you learn about the process and the profession and yourself?
Oh, so let's just say the first time or the second time, even when I walked into the classroom, people would say, "Hey, where's the teacher?" And I say, "Oh, that's me. I'm the teacher." And they're like, "How? How? How? You're like 25." And I said, "Well, all you need is a master's to teach college level classes. I have a master's. Here we are." To that was a little nerve wracking because now I'm on the other side of the classroom, and how I went about that and how I navigated that was I first built some rapport, asking everybody, you know, what are you doing? What's your name? Where you're from? What are you studying? What do you hope to accomplish? And then at the very end, I said, raise your hand if you are studying political science. Out of my first class was like 40, 42, 45 students. Three were political science majors. So now I'm going to speak to 40 something people who don't care about politics. And navigating that was a little tricky, but what I ended up doing was bringing it to a personal level that required a lot of thinking outside the box and curiosity about what goes on and how it plays with political science. So, for example, I would say I would go through the lesson. About 45 minutes left in the class, I'd say we're going to watch this video from Vox, and it's going to be about how Western African people are migrating through Morocco to try and get into a city that's actually owned by Spain, that's on the coast of Morocco. So I want you to tell me how this is going to affect U.S. relations with Europe and with Western Africa and with Morocco. So we're going to talk about these things as a conversation so I can stretch your brain capacity to say, just because it's not happening in the US does not mean it's not going to affect me.
I love the I love that you had enough awareness to create both an opportunity for learning, but an appetite for people to care beyond their current context. I think a lot of times, not only in education, but in business, we can stay so laser focused about what's myopically around us and not looking
Right.
outside to figure out the second and third box consequences to things that are happening. It's really a smart move on your part. Now, now you did all this teaching in the States super early and you were, in high demand and then you get shipped abroad. Talk to me about Korea.
Oh, let's just say the first time I got there, I immediately got my visa canceled. So, um, after flying on Labor Day, that was my first time getting this close to business class. I was in Delta One. Thanks to some wizardry and good luck. I flew to South Korea. I landed in Seoul, and I took an airline from Seoul to Fukuoka to Jeju, where I was going to work. And
But who
apparently,
invited you to but how did you get the call to even come?
the call to come. Well, let's say January, early 2019. I was trying to work in China actually, and I kept doing interviews all through 2018 because I wanted to expand my Mandarin. Like I had been studying Mandarin, I was going to get my Zhongwen really high like skill level, and I got an email that said teach abroad in Harbin, China. And I would work as a university teacher teaching English in Harbin. And something told me not to do it. I looked at the opportunity. It was a great opportunity. I decided not to take it. Then about a week later, I get another email that's like, teach English in South Korea, get your TOEFL certificate this through this program. And I remember saying, oh, all the interviews that I was doing in China, they kept mentioning this TOEFL certificate or this TEFL certificate. And that email had it in there saying, oh, we'll help you get it as well. And
So,
they help
for
you get a
people who don't
job.
know what a TOEFL certificate is, tell them what a TOEFL certificate is.
All right, so it is a teaching English as a foreign language certificate. So TEFL, but in some countries it's TOEFL because that's the one through the EU,
Mm.
or CELTA. I think it's three of them that you can use. And some countries only allow you to have 90 hours, 120 hours, or 150 hour certificate. And
Mm.
you can't get jobs in certain countries if you don't have some minimums. So if you want to go to China or Korea or Japan, and some other Southeast Asian countries, 120 is the minimum that you need. If you want to go
Mm.
to Saudi Arabia, EU, I mean not EU, the Emirates, Oman, and those, they might require like 120 or 150, depending on the university or the school or the
Okay.
yeah.
So it's a certification to teach English as a foreign language in a foreign country.
Yes.
They're recruiting people who are teaching to go and go
Mm.
abroad. You get the bait, you take the bait, you decide not China but Korea, and
Yes.
you're on a plane.
Right. I with the ambition that because Korea is so close to China, I could just go to China. But
But
that's
for
another
those who
bag of
are
worms.
geographically challenged, they are not the same place.
Yes, and we're talking about South Korea because that is another question that comes up. People will say, "I hope you wasn't in North Korea," and I said, "No, obviously. As an American, we can't even go there anymore." So, South Korea is where I was, and I get there and I have a job with the Korean government's Department of, well, the Provincial Office of Education, or as the Department of Education for that particular province, Jeju. And I was going to be working at the Shin-Jeju Foreign Language Center, which is one of five major centers that provide English education to students who are not in the private school English education program on the side after class. So once they get out of elementary school, high school, middle school, they go to these things called hagwons, which are like private academies, which
Okay.
are mostly privately owned, and they pay an absurd amount of money just so that they can level up English, mathematics, piano, things that would help them excel in certain not skills, but their tests that for graduating middle school that selects the high school that you go to, and the high school test that can really determine what college you get into. So these hagwons are basically integrated into society to supplement those big tests they have coming up as academic milestones. So
Because
the one I
the,
worked at
the
was
the
government funded,
landscape educationally is competitive, right?
beyond competitive. Yes,
Okay.
like a little tidbit I'll say is they have a education system, and a lot of East Asia has an education system, and I believe Southeast Asia too, that is built on this Confucian system.
Mhm.
So I also studied Chinese history at one point. So uh, the Confucian system is basically there were these three massive books in Confucianism that you needed to memorize by heart, and then you go to the Empire of China, the King's Court or the Emperor's Court, and you would take these exams. And if you took the exam and was successful in passing like Confucian thoughts, written, all these different tests, you could literally bring your village out of poverty, like single handedly. And
Wow.
so you would have people developing, like all the villagers would bring all their money together in some situations to fund the education of one brilliant child that would go on to take these exams and hopefully pass to bring the village out of poverty. And so that kind of mindset around education kind of prevailed, where you have these major milestones of my middle school test determines what high school I can get into, and my high school test determines what college I can get into, and you only get one shot. So you can kind of imagine the pressure once you hit seventh grade, which is when middle school starts. I have to do this, or else I might not, uh, the honor to my family or to myself, or the things I
Yeah.
want to strive to become is very heavy on the youth, really. And so you just run into a lot of kids that say the thing I want to do most on my vacation is sleep, because when I leave school, I am in a hagwon from 3:30 to 10 o'clock at night studying.
And I think that context is really important in contrast to some of our other guests because the foundation of philosophy in where you were teaching is so much different than potentially here stateside, right? So, an
Yes.
entire system of philosophy and education that's based on Confucius, the philosopher,
Right.
from what is it, 400 BC or whatever the time frame is,
Right.
right? To now that still stands as an indoctrinated part of the culture and shapes the concept of education itself being the chief thing. So you go from kind of laissez-faire American to like, no, this is war. And you're here to win.
Yes.
Context you're in from an education perspective, right? As an
Yes.
educator. And not even like a veteran educator, like you like 2 years in,
I
you
was
still got
brand new.
right. So wet behind the ears, as they would
Yeah,
say.
I was 1 year at two universities, and then I dived right into ESL, or English as a second language, abroad.
And
And
the deep end of the pool from an educational requirements perspective. So you
yes,
find yourself dry land overseas with your visa revoked. What happens next?
I end up having to take a flight to Japan and staying in Tokyo to get a new visa to come back into the country and then start working. After that point, it was just luckily they provide apartments. By law, if you work in Korea as an English teacher, they have to provide housing. So I had a house, I had a nice apartment in the center of the metropolitan area, and the major city on the island, not too far from any public transportation. And crazy enough, there was so many things that happened prior to me getting to Korea. But let's just say I only had $100 in my account. So because I was in Taiwan previously during lessons about Mandarin history, culture of Taiwan, and how it's related to China, going to their State Department, and so on and so forth. One of the lessons I taught in at college was a video about what's the protest that was going on in Hong Kong, and how Hong Kong has this very big protest culture. So as I'm leaving Taiwan, my flight gets delayed because of a typhoon, landing me in Hong Kong during said protests that shut down the airport that day I was supposed to leave. So I'm staying in one of the most expensive cities in the world for an additional 3 days, and then coming back to Atlanta after buying a full price ticket back to Atlanta to stay for 1 week to pack my bags and then eventually come to Korea after picking up my visa. So I
And
was
just
low on funds. Oh, I was low on funds.
so here's my question. And was any of that a signal like maybe I shouldn't like an omen like,
As
you know what? God is trying to tell you something. Like
um, let's just say, and I keep saying let's just say, but my mom did not raise a quitter, and neither did my grandmother. So those two people have have tenacity and ambition unlike any other people I've ever met in my life. And so ingrained in me, if something goes wrong, hello, grandma, mom, anybody, let's talk through this and let's see how this is supposed to work. But this was not a quitting moment. This was a moment in, let's say, self sharpening,
Okay.
honing
Okay.
those resilience
Resilience,
skills. Yeah,
right?
honing resilience.
Oh no, Daphne. I probably would have been like, look, let me tell you something. I don't know. I
Every
don't believe in quitting either. I do believe in planned exits, right?
no,
But go ahead. So you didn't quit. You chose not to quit. All right. You
no,
you
yeah,
get back on the plane after spending all your money and getting there with $100.
right. And so I get there at $100. I first thing I do anytime I go to any country is pick the road from my hotel and walk straight. I want to know what is in that area. And so I walked out of my hotel. I walked straight. I kept walking straight as far as I could. And then I go get something to eat. I turn around. I come back. Next day, I walk straight in a different direction. And that way, at least I know what is in that general vicinity of where I am. At the end of maybe my free time, because there was a holiday the day I landed, I went to work and I was introduced to my coworkers. Two were from the US, one was from Australia, and one was from Canada. And they're all English teachers and they have experience from 3 years to 8 years. And no, I think 10 years. And I'm working with these people and they're giving me the rundown like, hey, this is how it happens. This is how we communicate with the director. We have to go through the coordinator because she is kind of our de facto translator sometimes, or she is the one that kind of changes what you say into a more Korean communication style so that you don't come off as maybe like disrespectful because Americans have more of a
Direct and there's
direct,
less.
indirect communication style.
Yeah.
So we'll tell you that we don't like something, but we won't be, this is bad. We'll say it's not
Yeah.
exactly what I'm looking for.
It's more passive aggressive.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
we're trying to be polite, but we're also trying not to. Yeah, we're and
Yes.
and and a lot of other cultures is like, no, it sucks, and this is fine.
Right, absolutely. And so I'm working in Korea, which uses a circular communication style. So they want you to, or they feel, there's a word for it, I can't remember. It starts with a D, but I can't remember the word, but basically it means to feel. You're supposed to feel what's going on. So when somebody
Emote.
says, "Oh,
You're supposed to emote or like intuit and
yeah,
understand,
like in
assume.
yes." So if I say, "How is this? How's this project?" and uh, ooh, you should make some changes, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what to change. I'm just going to say, it could be better, and that's it. So you have to understand what that means and make it better or make some adjustments and then go back. Or they won't tell you they don't like something, they'll say something very vague that means that they don't like it. And that's just not work life, that's a lot of people. The only Koreans that I've met in that situation that could understand that were the ones that lived abroad in like in the U.S., whether they went to high school and middle school, they kind of understand how to navigate when they work with another American. But when you're on the opposite end, and I've studied abroad in Japan, I've been to these other Asian countries, and I understand how to navigate it. But working in that situation is a lot different from just being a student in that situation or being a tourist or in a
Yeah, because your
non-professional setting.
condition in those spaces is very temporary, right? You're in a very temporary space, but when you are employed, you are a part of that community. And so what I'm hearing is, the circular communication, I would assume it's based on a lot of nonverbals. right? So if
Yes.
you're neurodiverse, you're probably having a whole hard time because you can't read people's faces. Then I would also assume, based on the context of the country, it also has something to do with like balance and inner peace. Like we don't want to disrupt the harmony.
Yes.
So like how so so how does that play into you having a bad boss?
Well, the director of my education center, he came from accounting. He was not a education. He was not a principal, not a. He was not a teacher. He was just an accountant, and they put him over a center, and he just happened to be put in the best performing center on the island. So they have this thing. We're in Shinjeju. Shinjeju. Shin means new in some context. So in a new part of the city, that's more residential, more they care about academics more, so much more things. And then the main center is in Gu, which means old. So here in the old part of the city, and every time we have a meeting, he's like, "Oh, what is the Gu Center doing? Gu Center," and we're like, "We're better than them. Why do we care what they're doing over there? We have more kids in better schools and better performing. They are doing their own thing in their part of the island. They service in their community. We shouldn't worry about that." But when it came to speaking to meetings with the other center leads, he would fold. When we advocate to the coordinator, she talked to him and say, "Hey, the teachers think this is how we can best service the students in this region of the island." He would go, "Great, I like that." And then when he get up to meet the other chain of command, he would fold because you also based in Confucianism, you have this thing called filial piety, which is knowing your place in society. So I think, funny enough, a lot of in the U.S., a lot of minorities have filial piety and don't know it. So that is knowing the relationship between your mother and the daughter, or the father and the son, or the pastor and the congregation, or the king and the citizens. This is filial piety. So in the situation and this
Wait, wait,
one,
wait.
he is
You can't keep going. You got to stop
sorry.
there. You got to stop. That's like a bomb, right? Like, so I'm thinking, I'm gonna bring you into my personal life. My son's autistic. I've said this in a couple of different contexts in a couple of different conversations. And I've never been able to put a label on it in terms of a one multisyllabic word of like what he's doing. Right. I always say he's just not a respecter of persons. He don't care who you are. He don't care where you've been. He don't care how much money you made. He's going to tell you like, "Oh, you stink," or "Oh, you're in my way," or "Get out." Like he just has because he has no frame of
Mm.
concept of both hierarchy or position. The other day we were here, we were out, and he called my mom by her first name.
Oh,
And I thought he was going to lose his life. And because he's the grandchild, that didn't happen because grandparents have
nice.
so much more grace. Then she thought it was funny. And I'm like, but I would have died in 1980, whatever, had I ever called you by your first name. But I love this notion of filial piety and how it shows up both in working situations and cultural situations and religious. Like I'm done. Like we're done now, guys. If you know
Yeah.
where
If you
you
any
stand in the
takeaway.
concept, yeah, like that's amazing, right? And I have to think about your finance leader who's in education with no education background. I would imagine him knowing that he didn't know what he was doing. He just folded anyway because he didn't want to smoke because he didn't know what to do. Now that is not cultural, and that is legit. That is a bad boss trait. Like people
Yeah.
get hired for many different reasons, and probably he was somebody's favorite finance guy, and he was being moved out of the way. So they put him over here, or he won a bet, or whatever it was. He wasn't qualified for the role.
Right.
And rather than him have enough self awareness and humility to say, I don't know this, but let me learn from people, let them educate me, whatever. Because I
Mm,
feel like leadership skills are transferable. So if he wasn't a good leader in finance, he's not going to be a good leader in education because it's really about judgment, not about knowing the education system. And so for
mm.
me, that's a red flag. Like, he know, and he wasn't willing to listen to y'all. And the other thing she said was funny to me is his desire to copy someone else's paper from a different district
Yeah.
because he didn't know what he didn't know. Right? It reminds me that, many years ago. I think it was a Super Bowl commercial where you see these guys in a conference room. They're like, I wonder what the guys at such and such company are doing. And then they pan to another company. I wonder what the guys at such. He's like, I wonder what the guys at GlaxoSmithKline are doing, or whatever the phrase.
Right.
And the idea is like they're all like churning over these regurgitated ideas because they don't have any.
Right. Not a
And
single
that
thought in that
happens,
room.
not a single original thought, right? That happens. And it really, that sucks because you as the professional want to
Mm,
be able to add to the conversation, but the powers that be won't let you.
exactly. And that's just one aspect. So imagine we're switching to online learning because of COVID. And
Oh, so you
we,
were there doing the Rona. Okay.
oh yeah, it was, I got there before Corona,
Okay.
and then life like took turns in February that year. But I enjoy staying in Korea. I think I made a great decision by staying, against
Mhm.
the wishes of my family, who called me and said, "You sure you want to stay over there?" And I said, "I'm gonna take my chances over here. I think my chances of survival are significantly higher. Not even by thin margins. I mean exceedingly high margins of survival." I
Daphne,
was up there.
for all of the United States of Americans that are on listening to this podcast, all of my fellow Americans, don't throw shade at the country. Like we was just in a very interesting time at that time with the not vaxing, the vaxing, the mask, the no mask, the half a mask. Just leave us alone. Like
Yeah.
we thank God for those of us who were able to survive. We pray for those who were not, and you don't have to rub it in our face.
I'm sorry. I just think they did a really good job at.
What did they do differently, Daphne? Tell us what you learned.
All right, what they did differently. First, we have contact tracing. So, if I went into a store, I had a QR code on my mobile app that they all use called Kakao Talk. Um, I scan in on my QR code, say that I was there. I go shopping, I do whatever I want. Also, second, there's a culture of wearing masks if you're sick, period. So you don't
Mm,
want to spread it because keeping harmony in society, I don't want to get other people sick. I
I
still want
want
to
to
go,
stop.
but I don't want to get people sick.
I want to stop there. I think if we could, pull the thread, and I'll make just a general assumption. The idea of community itself is so indoctrinated in the culture and the desire to perpetuate and keep community safe made it easier
Significantly.
for your community to navigate it.
Yes. And that alone. But if I could keep going, I can make it
Go ahead.
crazier.
Go
So
ahead.
if
You're
somebody was sick let's say they was in the same shopping center as me, I would get a message and say, "Hey, if you were in the shopping center at this date around this time, consider going to go get tested because there was a confirmed case that came through that store." If I was to get sick, the government would pay not only my entire salary, I had free healthcare because I'm in Korea, single payer, free healthcare, $60 a month, crazy. So I I would go to the doctor, or the hospital until I recovered, or maybe not, and that all would be paid for. If I was had mild cases and I need to stay home in quarantine, they would literally send a 2 week box with a thermometer, food, medicine to my door, and then I would take it in. I would cook, I would eat, I would do whatever, and then when I feel better, I go back into society.
You're still
And that's
not
just a
ahead.
little bit. There's like so many more things, but that's the three or four I talk about.
In contrast, I remember people having conversations like, "Yeah, I feel sick, but I don't know if I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna need you to tell somebody."
I couldn't even
Like,
go in school without the heat scan to see if I had a fever. And then I had to write my temperature on a piece of paper. Then they could say, "Oh yeah, on this day when such and such was sick, he taught this classroom. Everybody in that classroom going home, and that's it." Like, I think my semester ended when I switched jobs to the public school side in Korea. When a teacher got sick, they sent everybody home. They was like, "Oh, the school's about to end in a week for winter vacation anyway. Send everybody home. everybody, everybody go home, and then
all
you'll
right,
just
so
teach them online."
you started like you got in the middle of the pandemic. You have this
Mm,
leader who's a leader in position but not in profession,
yes,
and you find yourself trying to navigate both the cultural differences and learning your profession in a
yes.
foreign country. Like, how much more did you have to learn the hard way in terms of having a leader
Mm,
that sucks?
how much more did I have to learn? I think those are the two hardest parts. But I guess if I could say a third thing, it would be learning about myself. One
Well,
thing.
wait, before you go there, I didn't we talk about you getting like performance feedback that was really
Oh yes. So if I could take a step back from that question and go in this direction.
yeah.
When I first joined that center, there was a performance review that's supposed to be had for all teachers every 6 months. The reason why I had an interview at that company in the first place, well, not company, that center in the first place, was because a teacher had left to go work in Egypt and her position was open. And
Mm.
I interviewed for that role and got her job. Her review was coming up in November. I had just started working in mid September.
Okay.
I am 1.5 months into teaching in a foreign language. I mean, teaching English to kids who some understand English, some don't. Teachers is coming in and they say, "Oh, well, usually it's 6 months, but because we're doing everybody here, we'll just do you right now. We'll just teach right now. We'll just ask you to do the review right now." So not only am I nervous, but I'm still figuring out how to do my job really well. And they, I do the class, I teach. Kids love it, obviously, but the I get my feedback and they said, "Oh, you're not performing to the standard that we want because we felt like some of the things or the lessons that you did were a little bit more difficult than what we think the kids should be getting into, or you did this thing and this is kind of what we want in a way." But they said because we did your review too early, that we know it was too early, we're gonna give you another shot. Coincidentally, my second shot was when we transitioned to teaching English on the internet because of COVID. So kids are at home in a classroom. So my review comes 1 month after we switched to online learning. The thing that every teacher on the planet was learning how to do through the month of
Yeah.
March. So,
Everybody was on the struggle bus,
right. And
including
so,
the parents, those of us who were parenting at home, trying to make the kid do the work and stay in front of the computer while they were doing the work.
1,000%. 1,000%. And so I am trying to get my lesson concrete. I'm getting feedback. I'm saying, "Oh, this is how the lesson should go." Talking to the other people at the center. I did my review, and then I get another, "Oh, this is not what we wanted. Oh, you didn't do well." And I was like, "Of course. I just started teaching virtually like 3 4 weeks ago. It's not going to be perfect." And so as we moved from there, we had I believe that was like April. So when we get into June time, like June, it was this how would I say this demonstration room that we bring a lot of students in from different schools, and then they watch a demonstration of how to navigate certain situations in English, such as ordering food in restaurants, checking into a hotel, going into an airport and getting and boarding your plane. So when I first joined, I was at the restaurant, but in this case, they wanted me to make a new lesson for the airport. And literally, when you went downstairs into the building, there was a room that had a airport kind of like a security door and a room that had seats that you was like entering into an airplane. So
Okay.
I'm making the lesson for it. I'm saying, hey, let's go. We're gonna go to
That's fancy.
non-Western countries per se. We're gonna go to the U.S. because all kids know U.S. We're gonna go to Brazil because they love soccer and they love the Brazil team. We're gonna go to Greenland and talk about like penguins or something. Just making stuff up. So I have the one ticket, please. You know, going through security. Have a seat. Here's your seat. The whole lesson. And I'm giving a demonstration to the director, the coordinator, the other teachers. The other teachers like it. They're like, this is good. The director, hands crossed,
The finance guy director.
finance guy. He's like, And then he leaves after the thing is over, and then the coordinator says, Daphne, I don't think he likes it. He says you should make some changes. So
What changes?
I make exactly. I don't know what changes. So I go make some changes. I say, okay. I talk to the other teachers
What
who
changes did you make? Because I'm sorry. Maybe I'm petty, but I probably would have like I don't know changed the font on the paper.
no, you.
Something dumb.
I think it's called. I don't know the word, but you have to feel it. You have to feel the changes that you're supposed to make. So I'm saying, okay. The coordinator is like, he said something about the countries. He felt like it's too many countries. I reduced the number of countries to from 5 to 3, streamlined it because you don't want the same. I don't want the same experience every single time. As
No.
well as I want to give the students when they talk to like other friends that go to different schools. I was like, oh, when we went to this place, and you went to like U.S. We went to Brazil. Just to give you like options. And I have the PowerPoint set up to where when I clicked on it, it took you to a separate section of the PowerPoint so that you can go
I have
have like a
inside her
different
brain.
adventure. Yeah. I changed the countries. I streamlined it a little bit more. I presented again. Same thing. You should make some more changes. But what changes are we trying to have? And it was literally driving me crazy because not only did I have a bad review from I felt like the situation I was like messed up from the bad review not once but twice. I'm also in the situation where I'm incredibly frustrated by just the lack of communication that I could get in a situation where I'm in like redemption mode, I feel like. And so he just doesn't give me any feedback and it just drives me through a wall. And I ultimately they were like, "Oh, we're just gonna scrap the whole thing because you're still online," and we were hoping that COVID was supposed to, die down or something. So we're just not gonna do it. So not only did I make changes, you also canceled the whole thing altogether, and I just
Nothing
felt
says thank you like work that you never get to produce.
exactly. And July has come around, and we're like halfway through July, and I sent an email to the coordinator. It's like, hey, I know my contract renewal thing's supposed to come up. I haven't gotten anything back from the director about anything. It's been like a month. She comes to my office directly, almost hand on shoulder, tear in her eye, and was like, "We're not gonna renew your contract. I, if you need help, let me know. I will do my best to help you." So now I'm in shambles. I'm in shambles of a I'm a fragment of a man I used to be in this conversation because I felt like I was just slapped in the face, front hand, backhand, uppercut. I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where I'll stop with like that boss situation. That is that.
The performance management situation. So they're trying to manage your performance without. Did you ever like send any emails like, "Hey, listen, I got this from you. Does this sound right?" Did you try to like do a back and forth checking or
Um, I went through the channel of my coordinator because
because the
my
hierarchy?
yes, so I had to communicate through the chain, and also the coordinator spoke English. The director zero. So even if I tried to with the Korean that I had learned while being there, I would not have much to really talk to him about, or nor have the vocabulary to describe the nuance to have that
Yeah,
communication.
that's a
And
big barrier.
right, it
That's a
is
big
huge
barrier.
because she was the only one that spoke English in the whole administrative office. Everybody else barely spoke English. They knew some, but not like enough to have like a full conversation with.
So you have a barrier in communication on many levels, but then you have to ask about your contract before they come and tell you that you ain't gonna have no job no more.
True. I think what she told me was he didn't want to let me down, and so he kind of pushed it off to the side. But my contract expires in September. I will have to go home to the US.
What did she mean
I'm
he didn't want
not
to let
ready to
you
go
down? He was
back.
gonna fire you. He wasn't gonna
Yeah, I
renew
was
your
like, "You
contract.
firing me, bro? Chill." It's already done.
I'm
So,
sorry. What did
so,
I'm stuck there. So how I would interpret this? You asked me, you didn't, but I'm gonna tell you anyway because it's my
all
show.
right.
So what I would interpret is he doesn't like conflict. He made the decision probably on the first iteration of your little airport exercise, right?
Yeah.
But but he didn't want to tell you that. He
Hmm.
didn't want to experience a lot of times leaders will make a decision. They will
Yeah.
make the decision up front. I said this is when we did episode 7 in the last season, which is when it comes to performance management, it was 6. Most leaders will determine right before they put you on that pip that they don't want you anymore.
Right.
Bad boyfriend, like, I know I don't want this girl, but we're gonna keep her here until I can get a new one. Like it's right, like it's that. He knew. I'm assuming I'm just this is Natalie's
Not a bench
picture of the world.
warmer.
Where I'm telling myself is that he knew he wanted to fire you long before he made you jump through all of those hoops. And he didn't want the conflict of having to deliver that message. And so he did it. Because what he could have done is had the administrator there, right? The assistant there and have the conversation, like tell him
Yeah.
this, tell him this, tell him this. But he didn't, which to me
Yeah.
seems a bit disrespectful. But again, culturally, I can't say I don't want to superimpose my
Yeah.
values into.
W- we're still in shock, but I think ultimately it was a saving grace. It was a saving grace
Why is that?
because in that moment, because it was COVID, they could not bring any teachers into the country, and so some people had decided to leave to go back to their home country, and they had a shortage of teachers to fill certain roles.
Nice.
So one day I'm on Facebook on the Facebook group for the teachers, that all the teachers that's on the island, the ones that work at the international schools, the ones that work at the Hagwons, the ones that work for the public schools, and the foreign language schools. I see one that says, "Hey, we're looking for teachers to go work for EPIC, which is the English program in Korea, which is funded through the government in Jeju specifically, and they already live here and they don't need to do anything." I literally turned in my exact application to that foreign language center because it was through the government, so it had the same application. Turn the same thing in.
Okay.
I talked to the coordinator. I tell her, "Hey, I'm doing this." She says, "All right, great." The lady calls her, the coordinator. The coordinator says, "I love Daphne. He's such a great person." Blah blah blah. And the lady says, "Great." I literally get a job working in a different department of the of the POE, or the Provincial Office of Education. So I just go and just switch under to the public school side, which put me about an hour away from my current apartment. And I lived on the southern part of the island in an area called Sogipo. Sogipo is more relaxed, it's more small town, even though it's like the second largest city on the island. But smaller town, smaller vibe. People are way more friendly because now you're even more farther south than you were. And as you go south in most countries, the friendlier people get. So,
That's actually not a lie. Being a northerner now, a southern belle, that's very true. Very,
yeah.
very, very true.
So I'm even more south than I was. So even in the north part, people are friendly, but now I'm more south than that. So they're more friendly. And I have more stable hours because I was working literally from 8:30 to 3:30 versus 11 to 6 some days, or 8 to 3. So my schedules was stabilized, and I was able to have like more free time and get back into Muay Thai, which was something I had picked up before I moved to Korea. And it worked out, like, and that's why I say, like, the adventure can't stop. The resilience, when you're met with these hurdles, you just jump over them, or in my case, punch a hole through it, because Muay Thai. So, and you just go right through the wall. Because if I had stopped with that bad review and went home, I don't think a lot of doors that I was able to open for myself would have opened if I had gave up. So when I saw that message, I luckily, and this is one thing I'll say, I had luckily built a really good rapport and relationship with that coordinator.
Mhm.
Like, had conversations with her. I found out her husband used to work when he had to do his mandatory conscription for the Korean military. He worked on a military base in in Camp Humphreys in Korea. And so he had this a favorite soda that I was able to get my hands on because I had a cousin that worked at Camp Humphreys that I had no idea even existed until I flew to Korea. So I was able to go on base, buy her husband's favorite soda, and bring it back to her. And so she's like, "Oh my God, Daphne, you're like the best person ever." I had built that rapport with her
I love it.
specifically because she ultimately ended up being my ticket out
Um,
into a new job.
I love that story because I tell people all the time, more often than not, folks fail at navigating some of these bad situations because they haven't built up their assets, they haven't built up their network, they haven't built up their advocates who can help them maneuver these systems. Because the system is what the system is. Can't
Yes.
get mad at the system. You can get mad at you not learning how to navigate and exploit the system,
Yes.
and not the person, not the person. Don't be used to it. I'm not telling you to go and be used to it. But the fact that you were able to connect the dots on, like, oh, you like that soda, let me get that soda, and building, like-mindedness and relationship, I think is incredible. So tell me what's one thing, like, of all of the things that you learned out of, like, all of the dynamics, the cultural, the hierarchy, all of that. Like, what did you learn about yourself, Daphne, when it comes to having lived abroad as an educator?
One thing I learned about myself had to be that it was a lot. I think I was a guy who ultimately was very friendly, but I really started drawing a lot of boundaries with people because my friends don't cross my boundaries. But people who are not your friends tend to always try and do just a little too much. I'm new.
Like, give me an example. Give me an example.
Oh
In the
man.
workspace, give me an
In
example.
the workspace. I think at work it was more chill. At work there was no chill. This is all outside of work, which
Okay.
ultimately affected work sometimes because then it takes up like mental space and you can't do your lessons or
All right. So
whatever.
tell me about the boundaries that people be crossing. Tell me.
I have a zero stress tolerance. I don't like stress. I as like external stress. If it's stress that I kind of got myself into, like I applied for a job and I didn't get a job, that is fine. But when other people start creating the stress and then bringing it to my life and trying to involve me in that, I draw the line. So I was once dating a young lady out there who had who was Korean, who had lived and went to college in Connecticut. This was like a three month kind of thing. It wasn't like even super deep. She wasn't even officially my girlfriend. She was just a lady who I liked, but something in the back of my mind was like, this is not. This is this is my first time like dating another person outside of my race. This is gonna be like different. So I'm taking this with like a lot of hesitation, a lot of precaution. So she ended up getting into an argument with another foreigner who was a teacher. And a lady shot a bird at her, and she took that so personally. And
Shot a bird.
a
You
middle
saw
finger,
flip the
flipped her
middle finger?
off, flipped her off, shot a bird.
Okay. I want to know. Like, I was like, I think I know what that is.
Sorry, yeah, yeah.
I
So
gave her the middle finger. And why shouldn't she take it personally?
I said, "Is this can be resolved if you just either have a conversation about it or ignore her because she doesn't matter as a person. She don't matter. She's in your country. You could just let it go. You don't even have to hang around her." I was like, there's so many foreigners that I've met that I just dismissed, and I don't hang out with them. I don't communicate with them because they're like outlandish or foolish or they do things I don't agree with. I remember her like escalating it, and she's like,
Mm.
"Oh, let's go to this thing because I know she'll be there, and then I'll such and such," or she'll say, um, "I'm gonna take her to court and I'm gonna do all this," and I was like, please stop. It's not that deep. We really it could be solved with just talking. I was like, where you've lived abroad. You lived in the US. You know how Americans act. Just just handle it like an American would and this problem would be resolved. So simple. I was like, I could just handle it for you. No, she wanted to take it to court. She wanted to do all this, and I was like, yeah, I gotta
That's mine.
distance myself from this situation. And ultimately, that relationship came and went. There was a couple other things in there too, but I was just like, you're not gonna involve me in this repeatedly after I gave you the scenario in which that could resolve the resolve it. And a month passed, and you're just still choosing to not resolve it and escalate and escalate and escalate.
Well, so I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is that more often than not, people don't want resolution. They want to be right. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference between wanting to resolve and move forward and grow for you and the other person versus I'm more right than you are. And so I've got to one up you and show you that I'm right. And I'm standing on the principle, not of the value, not of the long term, long game,
Mm,
but of the fact that I'm more right than you. And that creates this interesting dissonance. I know we're almost at time. When it comes to the bad boss situation,
mm.
what's one thing that you learned about Daphne Brown? Like, what's one thing like I learned that, I heard some things about resilience. I heard some things about the networking. Like, what's one other thing for your own leadership style that you've learned?
My leadership style that I came up that I think works best for me, and that's something that I've also carried through my MBA program that I pursued post leaving Korea. was I want to be a person who is known for not just being somebody's boss, but advocating for them to be better at their job and also being there to help them if they need help. And being more of a team player and leading from within than leading from the front. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah,
It
I'm gonna
makes
say kind of like
complete
a
sense.
servant leader,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I'm not super fond of that one.
All right. Very quickly, tell me why.
I think some people hear like servant leader, but they don't believe in it. They just use it as like a buzzword for their company.
Oh, well, wait a minute. You're mad at the hypocrisy of the
Yeah,
concept,
that's why
not
I
the
don't want to.
company.
I don't want to align
Okay,
myself with the hypocrisy of servant leadership as a title. I think
fair enough.
I genuinely think when you're able to build relationships within, you create stronger work synergy, and you can have people say, be vulnerable and say, if they can't produce something, they just don't do it and not tell you. They say, hey, something's going on. I know you well enough. You will hope you can understand. This is how I would like to move forward with it and how we can navigate, you know, the team better to create the best outcome. And I guess one example I can give about this was I had a I was the team lead for a consulting project in Tel Aviv. The We were working with a startup that had rent, like they were running out of money. They had a project. I mean, they had a product that was doing AI behavioral economics and trying to understand how we can push more, get customers to buy more within while they're inside apps, especially when they're in mobile gaming apps, or in business terms, you call them whales. The whales are the ones who spend the money in the app to help you to help fund the app itself. So two of my teammates were terrible at public speaking, and if you have five
Mhm.
minutes, you have 5 minutes. You get cut off. They stammered. They ate up a lot of time because they didn't have like the public speaking skills to navigate that situation. And so as we're working on the project through, they knew I was a little disappointed because I was the anchor. I was the one that's supposed to send it home. I couldn't even get to send it home because we got stopped. So they was like, Daphne might be a little mad. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. So
Yeah.
when I started communicating, I would say, hey, I understand that you are great at strategy. Let's move you to strategy and let's move you up so that if we need to speed up, we can have you say things, and then I'll bring myself after because I could talk through these things faster, and then we can make up for the time if we do lose it. But I want you to know we're gonna give you out of 12 slides, we're gonna still give you 2 slides, but we're gonna make sure we practice on how you communicate it, and that way we can deliver the best possible thing to the client and to our professors that are grading us. We at the end got the best presentation
Nice.
because we also had the hardest startup to work with because they had no money, they had no product to sell. So we actually were set up to fail from the beginning. But due to a lot of interpersonal skills that I've learned while I was in Korea and navigating, and my plethora of ability, like not abilities, plethora of travels that I have been to and interacting with people from different countries, I can navigate it with a lot more sympathy, empathy, and nuance. And also just being my naturally charismatic self, I can kind of work around certain situations to be the best team player and also the best leader.
No, I totally appreciate that, especially when it comes to utilizing people for their skills and not trying to keep pressing them in places where they literally obviously have no skills,
Mm.
or at least they haven't developed the skills yet. I think that's absolutely a part of servant leadership is giving people the like not being mad at her like, oh my God, you wasted all our time. Like, ooh, well, this went well, but we could have done this better. It's a
Yeah.
balance and trade. And frankly, I think a lot of us lack diplomacy, right? Like not only just the empathy, just the diplomatic way of not being completely circular, but acknowledging the
Mm.
good with the bad and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, to use a phrase. So, Daphne, if there's one thing you would want educators, at least young educators coming into the scene that may be thinking of like following kind of your journey, what would be the one thing you would want people to know?
I think if anybody was trying to get into higher education or ESL, you need to be willing to say yes. There's a lot of situations where you are, for example, thrown into a foreign land and you don't speak Korean or you don't speak Thai or you don't speak Arabic. Say yes to going outside and making friends that don't look like you or come from the same country as you. Say yes to going on excursions with those same friends and, I don't know, going to hike the tallest mountain in South Korea or do hiking trails around the entire island. There is so much beauty and I don't know, like this je ne sais quoi about and wanderlust about just experiencing that. And whether you get homesick or miss walking outside and seeing people who look like you, there is still a beauty, especially as a person of color. I'm a black person, at being the best representation for my students to understand how black people interact with them, so that when they grow up, they don't see certain stereotypes of black people and say, hey, this is not how my teacher acted when they were in school, educating me. I am an ambassador for my ethnic group, my race, my community. I am being that. So say yes to being more than just an individual. Say yes to being a part of a community.
Daphne, this has been a really great conversation. I want to know, like, what's next for you? Like, what's going down in Browntown? What's happening?
Well, right now, post MBA, I am still looking for full time work. It has been a turbulent job market. However, in the meantime, and having all this free time, I have launched a tea and coffee business that will be arriving this month of July. And it's called Kwanzaa, which means first in Swahili, because the first thing that you think about when you wake up is my tea or my morning coffee. And yeah, happy to have got this far after 2 years of planning, execution, going to Kenya, going to meet different farmers, understanding the landscape, and sourcing all of our products from East Africa.
Well, listen, I cannot wait to taste my first cup of Kwanzaa. And we wish you all the best success. We're going to make sure we have all of your connections and social media handles in the show notes. Daphne Brown, thanks for being on the
Oh
show.
yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Today's episode is brought to you by Natalie Parker Enterprises, where we shape the future and unlock potential by helping organizations and people work together to do good work. Find out more at thenatalieparker.com. Or if you'd like to be a sponsor, email us at info@thenatalieparker.com.